Good evening, everyone. Holiday evening. My name is Stefan Kurashak. I'm not a doctor. I'm a master, a teacher. I worked in diplomacy for 15 years as a trade counselor, and I had a personal experience. That led me to devote myself to health a little in 1996. I had stomach cancer and academician bolo too. A nuclear physicist and mathematician taught me something that the doctor probably intended. They don't teach me. The further I go, the more I'm convinced that it's intentional. And gradually, through all the knowledge that he passed on to me and then to over 30 other experts, that medicine doesn't like because it ruins their business. So I started passing it on, and those people who started using it, so many were cured of diseases that medicine claims are impossible. And more than half a year ago, a well-known video was sent to me where Mrs. Oksana interpreted each experiences from her Kazakh partner from my friend about these products. What interested me was that these products have something in common with what academician Bolotov taught me. The essence is actually one single cause of all diseases, or almost all diseases. That is pH, wrong pH. We are, when the acid-base balance in the body is disrupted, then they cannot function normally, so that it functions normally. So we are helped by homeostasis, which ensures that all cells have a normal working environment, that they have the right temperature, the right pH, so that they have everything available, so that they can function normally. The whole thing is based on the fact that in the organism, just as in nature we have a majority of bases, a minority of acids, in our organism there is also something similar. We imitate nature, or we are part of it, so it looks similar. In our organism, there is a majority of bases and a minority of acids, and in the organism, there are two such places extremely distant from each other. On that pH scale, one is the most acidic place in the organism. That is the stomach, the second most alkaline place. That is the duodenum in the stomach. In a healthy person, it is 1.2 to 1.7 pH, and the pH of the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine, right behind the stomach, there is from 8 to 12. It is a little different for everyone. Every organism is a little different, but the principle is that the most acidic place is the stomach, the most alkaline is the duodenum, and they are next to each other, on top of each other. That means neighbors, so that fire and water do not mix, so that acids and bases do not mix before. They do their job so that there is a sphincter between them, called the pylorus, and it doesn't let them in. It only lets the digestive juices out of the stomach when the acidity is reduced, when the acidity is high at the beginning. The pylorus is closed. That's the muscle. That keeps the stomach closed when the acidity is reduced. When the food is broken down, the proteins mainly the proteins into amino acids, are broken down in the acidic environment. When it is reduced to 5 to 6, then the pylorus opens, the digestive juices go into the duodenum and are neutralized there. When this tandem doesn't work well, it happens that the food is incompletely broken down in the acidic environment and then in the alkaline environment in the small intestine. The bacteria can't complete the process because they need it to be prepared. To be pre-prepared in that acidic environment, to be broken down, and if that's not done, it comes into the duodenum. There it is neutralized. It comes into the 12, into the small intestine, where bacteria are waiting for it, so-called saprophytic bacteria, which are supposed to feed our cells when it comes. It comes unprepared, the bacteria can't do it. So it goes to the large intestine, and there the putrefactive bacteria take over. There the bacteria take over, which have to decompose the proteins that we didn't use by rotting. So the more we add such imperfectly spread out material in an acidic environment, the more putrefactive bacteria we test there. So what happens is that those bacteria, when they multiply in the large intestine, in the disturbed mucosa of the large intestine, where it happens either because we eat certain foods, but I won't go into that in depth, or we have constipation once, twice, 3 times, and the mucosa becomes inflamed, then those putrefactive bacteria start to rot our large intestine. That is, they disrupt the mucosa and the lining of the large intestine lets toxic substances of decay from the large intestine directly into the blood. It must not go directly into the blood to the neighboring organs. It must go either out or back into the liver, and the liver must neutralize it all. Not let it into the blood. Unfortunately, most people damage that system, and the further, the weaker the stomach acidity, the weaker it gets. The more it goes on, the longer it goes on, the less we have those useful bacteria in the small intestine. Because those that have nothing to do are constantly, repeatedly not given work. So those bacteria gradually die. We are supposed to have around 1,900 species of bacteria there, and most of the time it happens. In humans, they have roughly half of those bacteria. So there is no one to complete the process and feed our bacteria. So when the protein comes into the large intestine, and in the large intestine, it just has to rot first at. The protein goes into the stomach. In the stomach, it is incompletely broken down. Then it is neutralized in the duodenum. It comes into small intestine. Bacteria in the small intestine do not finish it because they say they should have done it up in the stomach in an acidic environment. So they give it to putrefactive bacteria, and this process leads to us becoming more and more acidic, the lower our acidity. The more acidic we are, the more acidic the whole organism is. This is similar to when you put wood in the stove and it burns badly. So you have a full chimney. After a while, you need a chimney sweep, and when it burns well, the chimney is relatively clean. So exactly the same thing happens in the organism. The stomach must be a good combustion engine. Pahar is familiar with this. He says that there should be the fire of Agna. There was a god of fire, Agna. So in the body, and how? This is related to science. The Vita company got me excited about it. I put off the video that Mrs. Hoxana was translating for a long time. Because it was long and I never have enough time to listen to some videos or watched Once I traveled to Eastern Slovakia and I had enough time on the train. So I listened to it, but I was immediately convinced that it was exactly what I needed for the whole system, for the puzzle. So I visited Mrs. Oksana in Bratislava, and I was convinced that this is what provides such a foundation for everything. I am an opponent of all those medical procedures that are built on that some operations are used to remove the consequences. It's nonsense. Their symptomatic medicine already belongs to the Middle Ages. Unfortunately, Rockefeller medicine has removed from those comprehensive approaches. When people were treated with nature, it has removed everything that was there, all nutrition, acupuncture, acupressure, herbs, everything is trying to be removed. Because the Rockefellers at one time started using the production of medicines from oil and supported all sorts of not only doctors who drank this way, and they gave them all sorts of grants, but each downright asinine doctors, despite taking the Hippocratic Oath, and he had such a motto that eat so that food is your medicine, because otherwise medicine will be your food. So the whole medicine looks exactly the opposite. Medicine is for the patient. There is a doctor in the Czech Republic who wrote a book, a brochure on how to make a patient, Dr. Nested. You have certainly heard of him, and it is beautifully described how an ordinary patient becomes chronic with the help of medicine. So if you come to the doctor, there is no such thing as a healthy person according to current medicine. Not one is a healthy person. When you have a son and you come to the doctor and he already has over 80,000 diagnoses in the tables, and he always somehow fits you, and it is enough for him to give you one medicine. In a while you will have 2 more and then 4 more, because all those medicines cause some side effects, and we then treat ourselves from those side effects. And if we were to look at what needs to be insured in the body so that we have the right pH, then not only that, we have to make the stomach, the small intestine work, replenish bacteria in the small intestine when putrefactive bacteria have multiplied, then remove putrefactive bacteria from the colon. But to help, and this is the biggest plus for the company, is that it has focused on products, on equipment, products and equipment, that all of our cells, with the exception of the pancreas, produce acids, and acids are actually positive charges. When we look at the pH scale from 0 to 14, 7 is a neutral environment. From 7 to 0, the closer to 0, the more positive those ions, the more acidic the environment. And from 7 to 14, the closer to 14, the more negative ions, the more alkaline the environment, and all of our body fluids should be weakly alkaline. That is, when we move into the acidic plane or into the alkaline plane, and both are for us thin, we only need to be weakly attached. So if we want our cells to get oxygen and nutrients, so we need to have functional blood, and functional blood is where the blood cells, red blood cells, are separated from each other. That means they stick together. They are not stuck together. People who drink little water have them stuck together. Those who drink alcohol have them stuck together. Those who lack negative ions have them stuck together when we take the cardiovascular system. It consists of arteries, then thinner arterioles, and then capillaries, and those capillaries make up the most, 80%. In order for blood to get into the capillaries, we have to realize one thing, that the red blood cell, it is a little bigger than it is in. It has to shrivel up and squeeze through the capillary. Then it transfers, throws off the oxygen that goes into the intercellular environment, where the cells take it from those who have sticky blood, then into the capillaries it doesn't get when those blood cells are stuck together in such coin-shaped columns. Or we also call it rouleau, from the French rouleau. So each such blood only works at 20%. Given that the majority is capillaries everywhere, blood has to get, and wherever the blood gets, everything is solved there. We have everything prepared by nature for that. When we get injured, it normally heals itself. You see how the wound heals, how the scab forms, and then the scab falls off. So normally the organism heals itself, as long as we don't prevent it. We don't prevent it. That means that when we ensure that the blood really gets to all tissues, to all cells, when positive ions start to prevail, it also stops functioning normally. Because the cell, because it is covered with positive ions, because it produces acids, inside the cell is mostly negatively charged. On its surface, positively charged. So when there is a negative oxygen ion, the cell attracts it like a magnet and starts producing a lot of energy. If we take an example like this, of course, there are 10 chemical reactions going on in the cell. We call it the Krebs cycle. If we focus only on the basic elements that the cell needs, the mitochondria, which produce energy when the cell receives one negatively charged oxygen molecule, one glucose molecule, it produces 36 molecules of energy in the mitochondria, or we call it adenosine triphosphate. When the cell also receives a molecule of healthy fat, that is healthy fat, not the one that the food industry, at the behest of the pharmaceutical industry, has started. They give us, instead of butter, they give us ram, samu, and I don't know what they are called. Instead of bacon. Instead of lard, they offer us all kinds of vegetable oils that have a low level of burning. So when people fry in vegetable oils, they directly produce carcinogens, and we should consume healthy fats, such as avocado, bacon, nuts, seeds. Healthy fats, and the food industry took those away from us. When, for example, it took milk. Skimmed milk took those healthy fats and replaced them with starch, actually to the sugars that are already in milk. It added even more sugars. Starch is a very quickly digestible or convertible convertible sugar into energy. Because when they didn't put starch in there, the fat-free milk looked like water, only slightly white, so they had to thicken it, and they thickened it by adding even more sugar. Sugar is what is harmful to us. Medicine convinces us that salt is harmful to us. But that's not true at all. Without salt, life doesn't. exist, and as they are now convincing the whole world that CO2 is harmful to us. And in fact, it's exactly the opposite. Without CO2, life doesn't exist. And when a person listens to the advice that he shouldn't add salt, he doesn't allow his body to produce the most important of the acids that are in the stomach, produces 31 of them. The most important is hydrochloric acid. For it, we need chlorides. If we don't get them, we only get them from salt. So we don't have the ability to properly break down proteins into amino acids in the stomach. And secondly, the stomach must be a sterilizer. Everything that comes with food, if bacteria, parasites, molds, everything we eat, if we have insufficiently high-quality gastric juice, if hydrochloric acid is the most involved in sterilization, then those parasites, leaves, bacteria, everything that harms us, those pathogenic microorganisms get into the intestines, and then when the putrefactive bacteria disrupt the mucous membrane of the colon, then they do well. Of course, they pass through the wall of the colon. It's called leaky gut syndrome. They pass into the whole organism. But when you put enough negative ions into the blood, then the first thing that is achieved is that the red blood cells separate from each other intercellular environment, because when they are separate, they pass easily into the capillary. I said that when they are stuck together, they don't get there, they only get to the arterioles, but not much into the capillaries. Only those that are relevant. And when the cell gets oxygen, the more cells get oxygen, the more energy it starts to produce. It can even increase the temperature, because that is its natural tool for killing pathogens. So when each, for example, is used in what is offered on the market, which could already be certified for the European market, Tocvontune is probably at the top. It produces a large number of negative ions that get into the blood through the legs. The blood can kill pathogens. Which medicine does exactly the opposite when the temperature is lower? It tries to suppress them, and the immunity starts only at 386. So when we have 38 degrees, we bring down the temperature. So we actually harm he naturally each dealt with those pathogens that multiply. The second thing is that the more cells produce energy, and that's all. Thanks to that oxygen becomes negatively charged. The best source of oxygen is water. Everyone thinks that we breathe oxygen. We mainly get it through breathing, but breathing is. We get supplemental oxygen through certain breathing, because there's only 21% oxygen in the air, and most of the molecules in the air are 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, roughly, because there are still some, each gas is very little But each convention for waterfalls, there are already a lot of negative ions there. There could be 1,000 negative ions in a cubic centimeter. At the Niagara waterfalls, they measured 100,000 ions. There are such devices. Scepter makes a purifier. That produces 220,000 negative ions in a cubic centimeter. But now they are much better. They even made a device that produces 18 to 20 million negative ions. But the most important thing is how to get them into the body, and the Vita company has come up with a way to get them into the body effectively. One of the ways is shoe inserts that produce those negative ions, because there are chips that produce those negative ions, and they easily get into the blood through the feet when walking. Feminine hygiene, which are actually usable for everyone because they also produce negative ions, are often treated who have problems with the prostate or hemorrhoids or urinary tract infections. Even if I have one who got mumps, her throat swelled. Usually such people end up in the hospital for some time. So she stuck that insert on her neck, and in the morning she was completely swollen. Everything was fine. She was completely cured. Another lady who couldn't sleep for 2 years, so she stuck an insert on her forehead, and says, "For the first time in 2 years, I fell asleep normally." So these are fantastic effects, and it's all about those negative ions. Then there are glasses, the frame of which is made of graphene. And that contains and produces those negative ions. It's not a completely revolutionary thing. Now, even in the United States, they've started promoting a cell activator. They call it ionic care. Despite the fact that there's some kind of trade war between the United States and China. So here these two technologies have come together. The Americans figured out how terahertz waves work. And the cell activator ensures there's a handle, a tube that can produce those terahertz waves when you blow on the body. Those terahertz waves enter deep into the organism, and with circular movements, we can activate that water to the maximum level. So that even those oxygens that are found in that intercellular space, the cells grab them directly and produce a lot of energy. Some wound healing is truly miraculous. I have a friend in Moravia who has a clinic, and his brother had open wounds for 2 years. Because he was diabetic. He is diabetic. He had leg ulcers. So incredibly, they just blew them 100% in the evening with that cell activator for 3 minutes. 3 times for 3 minutes, and in the morning it was half better, and in 2 weeks he had no wounds at all, not even a trace of the wounds. So he struggled with it for 2 years. He walked around constantly. He bandaged it because it was getting wet. When two technologies were put together, 1 terahertz waves, the other graphene, which was discovered by 2 Russians. They got a prize for it in 2010. One was called, and the other was called Nova Solo. Now they teach at a British university, Manchester University, about it. We are currently experiencing such a revolution, such a graphene gold rush. Because how graphene can be used, I don't even know, imagine what could be done with graphene. It gives huge possibilities in medicine, in electronics, in industry, everywhere on every level. So that, of course, they also got hold of vaccinations. So-called vaccinations, criminal gangs, which tried to vaccinate the whole world. So they also used it in vaccines, but like every technology can be used for something good and also for something bad. So in those vaccines, they put each nanorazors, which the graphene is in miniature each forms. 1 molecule thick and 50 long when frequencies are used from the outside each. So you can eat those graphene razors, so to speak, each structure them into any form, and you can do damage inside the organism each. It's incredible how people can abuse each all the achievements that can be used, for example, for filtration devices. It can even filter out radionuclides from seawater. It can filter it into drinking water. It can each. That's a terribly thin layer. It can each prevent the material from rusting. Artificial muscles can be made huge. Incredible possibilities are opening up. I don't want to ban everything because it's really a matter of the driver, but such possibilities have already appeared. You can make such each chip or like a tattoo. That can be put on a tooth in a person and it can transmit information. Just scan, like diagnose that or organism and transmit each mobile phone or other device. Of course, it can be abused because if you had such a chip, you have no access to it. How to collect that information? Someone else can collect it for you. And when we deliver that amount of negative ions to the organism, we we radically heal the entire organism. Because as I said, where the blood gets, there, everything about repair by nature, everything gets repaired there, everything gets built there, everything works as it should, where the blood doesn't get. There, everything goes down the drain. So I see a huge opportunity for each of us to have a tool at home with which the whole family can heal. I don't know if you registered in the United States on Fox News. There was a television program where they talk about the fact that those pharmaceutical companies started to collapse. Collapse in the sense that their shares have a huge drop, up to some 80%. So the medical empire is collapsing. And the cell activator was just a revolutionary device for healing the world. I think it would be good for you to look at it. I don't know where to put it. President Trump gives the Minister of Health, Kennedy, They started a big war against Big Pharma. They talk about this device as a revolutionary device for healing the world. That it's enough to take the drugs that they create only from a defenseless patient, and you need to start treating yourself differently. You know that about half a year before the election, he promised the world that he would make devices called medbeds available, and Big Pharma is strongly defending itself that the medbed will be available in the near future, maybe even in decades, that it will be made available. Because even people are not ready for such a revolutionary technology that would repair DNA, which Big Pharma is still trying to damage and convince people to get vaccinated. I won't name names, but there are simply a whole series of ministers who worked during the so-called pandemic age and convinced even children to get vaccinated, that they are criminals who probably need to be punished because it's such excessive mortality as there has been recently. This has no analog in all of history. It is said that some 20 million people have already died in the world. But these are very underestimated numbers. Because medicine always tries, when you remember, when someone had some health problem, they said it was COVID, even though they died of a completely different disease. They said it was with COVID or because of COVID, and now they are trying to mask those deaths. They say that it is not even vaccination. It is not the current medicine. That has reached a dead end. So I see. The space that opens up, regardless of how they look at Trump, as some kind of system breaker. They label him in various ways, but I think that the way he opened the door for change, for systemic change in the world, probably no one has done it. It is such an overton. The window has opened, so now all those who have something to say about it will be there, and Slovakia is doing fantastically. I really liked how they stood up against the pandemic contract. And also how these crimes are being investigated during COVID. Because there's nothing else to do but depopulation, and we have a great chance with this society for and prosperity to make a big change for ourselves. To start taking care of ourselves so that we have devices at home that will protect us from getting into the clutches of pharmaceutical companies. It will be very difficult work. But this, for example, a cell activator or each gives huge opportunities for us to grab it from ourselves at home. To start repairing ourselves regardless of what is happening in the world. If you come to any doctor, then I know that it is difficult for them to deal with it because first of all, they were taught by the same people who created the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical industry, chemical technological path. And secondly, they do not allow them to treat as they do simply with such such peasant reason to return back to nature and start to repair health with such that complex power of nature. Because disease is always disharmony and chemical drugs are also disharmony. When you want to repair disharmony with disharmony, then you cannot work towards harmony, and harmony is health. So we should turn more and more to nature when we look at where in Europe it is. How those pharmaceutical companies are trying everything. What someone offers from nature, and wants to say that, for example, such an herb or such a crop cures something. Then you cannot say that, because as soon as you say that, then you are fined in clinical trials. Pharmaceutical companies are pouring gigantic sums into clinical trials. And those others who know that some herb, crop, each from nature solves something, each. So you can't say that. There's such a big war between the classic chemical technological medicine and natural medicine, and our task is to return to that society. I think that we will reach a stage where it will be like it used to be in China. When the monarch got sick, the doctor stopped receiving money because he was probably doing something bad, something wrong, and when he was healthy, he received money. That could be done in our country too. Of course, a doctor who would teach the patient how not to be sick could receive a lot of money, and the one who would have a lot of sick patients would receive less money. So doctors are not teachers and not even role models. Because when you look at many of those, I won't name them, but in Slovakia and in the world, when you look at those leaders who are at the head of the ministry healthcare, how they actually look, such a person cannot teach anyone. Because they themselves look sick, and even during COVID, many there taught us about it. They should hide, not teach someone how to healthy when they themselves are unhealthy at first glance.